having attended an event that somewhat coincided with dogma or the belief in Christ, paying tribute to him, a few people noticed that I wasn't so enthused to contribute to, certain activities. And finally, a couple approached me and inquired, do you feel uncomfortable in this environment? I said, no, there's no house that I'm uncomfortable, with traveling or entering. And the husband kind of picked up on it, and he was like, so are you agnostic? And I said, no, I'm an atheist. And a lot of times you have people in this day and time, they wrestle, with the beliefs. Everybody have not arrived to that point where they just downright question how they have been raised, question the system that they have been, traveling or revolving, within. And he asked me, he said, well, I want to, talk with you if possible. Can we talk later? And I obliged. And later we talked. He approached me. He asked me, said, well, what put you on this path as an unbeliever, a non-believer? And I said, well, like you, because I have enough knowledge of him to know that he was born in the South. I said, I was born in the South like you. My mom, at some point, she believed that Jesus' blood would cover a multitude of sins. She would take us to church with her, even if Dad didn't show up. And if she had to work that Sunday, after her and Dad had divorced, she would put us on that bus to church. Doing the best she could, as a mother. My grandmother, which is her mother, was very religious, long-suffering. My father's mother, likewise. And after they divorced, I think things that I had experienced, as a juvenile, 10 years of age, being sexually abused at the age of 10, began to surface. And the only reason why I suppressed me being sexually abused in a Christian environment by a relative was because the only thing I could think of from my 10-year-old mind frame is I could see my mom asking, you did what? And to hear that, or to see that, foresee that, even conjure that up, thinking that, man, she's going to ask me, you did what? So I suppressed it. And I was sexually abused multiple times, forced to perform oral sex, on an older cousin. And we would spend about 2 weeks there. And the thing about sexual abuse is it teaches people to pretend that it didn't happen. Be quiet. That's where the silence come in. When you're quiet about something, that means nothing happened. You didn't see nothing. I'm not going to tell you nothing, so I'm going to remain silent. Nothing happened. That's what sexual abuse teaches. Be quiet. And that quiet moment could derive from feelings of fear, shame, misperceptions even, in the sense that you would think that people are going to think that you were a willing participant because you dress a certain way or because you was in a certain environment. So it's your perception of how you think people are going to see you. So what sexual abuse does is be the fuck quiet. Be quiet. Pretend this didn't happen. Be silent. I don't want nobody to think you're a victim. You don't want anybody to think you're a participant, a willing participant. So I remained quiet for 19 years. However, between that 19 years, by the time I was like 11 and 12, my self-esteem was shattered. I was being bullied. And one day I found myself in a cell as a juvenile because I was acting out. And I was acting out as my daddy later diagnosed as you was trying to prevent yourself from being a victim again. Because I was sexually abused not just by a relative, but even by a neighbor. And I was confined when I finally broke it to my mom and my sister in person over the visitation yard. And then I broke it to my dad over the phone. And it was him that diagnosed the fact that, like, damn, now I see why you was acting out. You didn't want to be a victim again. And in essence, there's a lot of truth to that. So here I am acting out, and I end up in a juvenile facility. And finally, I approached my mom one day and I asked her, after coming home, how do I get saved? That's a term we use. How do I get saved? Do I have to be at church? She was like, nah. You could be in the closet. You could be in the bathroom. You could be, anywhere. And just say the sinner's prayer. So I'm reminded of the sinner's prayer. With also Romans 10:10, for with the heart a man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. I just couldn't believe it, but I had to confess it. But then I'm also reminded of how Jesus said it. There was a group of people who speak highly of him with their mouths, but their hearts were far from him. So when I look at the scriptures, Matthew 5th chapter, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. For me, a peacemaker is not just somebody that is, matter of fact, it's not. I don't see a peacemaker as somebody that is, hold up, don't hit him, don't hit her. A peacemaker is somebody that had attained peace within themselves, and they went out to share that peace amongst other people. Peacemaker. But you can't give what you don't have. You take a carpenter. He's a carpenter because he first has the skill. He can't build a filing cabinet. He can't, or not a filing cabinet, but he can't build a cabinet, kitchen cabinet. He can't build a house unless he first possessed that skill. So as a peacemaker, I have to first be in possession of peace in order to go and share that peace, with other people. Matthew the 5th chapter. So in essence, it's not about just believing it. It's not about just quoting it, but I have to become what the scriptures are. When I look at the base word scriptures, it's script. I'm a playwright, screenwriter, and author. If I write a play or a screenplay, I look for my cast to become that. You got to bring this into fruition. And it was likewise, with the scriptures. I had to become who Jesus was based on these scriptures. So after saying the sinner's prayer, one day I called my auntie, Aunt Maylene, and I asked her, I said, well, how long should I fast? Because in my quest to become a Christian, I couldn't get mom on the phone at the time. She was working, and it just hit me. I had been reading about this man named Jesus, and I read that he had fasted. So I wanted to fulfill that scripture. So I called my Aunt Maylene and I asked her, how long should I fast? Because as a Christian, I was like, if I fast, did I fast long enough, She told me, she said, well, it's based on your spiritual growth. You fast based on your spiritual growth, your development. If that's 1 hour, if that's a half a day, if it's a whole day, or if it's 2 days, you fast based on your spiritual growth. And I took that and I ran with it. And I found myself joining a small church, fasting, praying. And I was a Christian. I had became a Christian when it was unpopular. Back then, Notorious B.I.G. had dropped Big Papa. Tupac, Me Against the World, all that was banging. Onyx, Brand Nubian. A lot of them boys was on the scene back then doing their thing. DOS Effects. Them boys were real reckless, on Yo MTV Raps. And what was the other one? Yo MTV Raps and Rap City with that boy Chris. Chris know what I'm talking about. But them boys were doing their thing back then. It was like very, I mean, you was showing up for square back then. You know, you talking about professing Jesus, not before the world, but before your peers. It's unpopular. However, I had been through some stuff, and I said, man, I'm ready to submit. And I can recall vividly one of my childhood associates that looked up to me. He told me, said, man, she, and he would know who I'm talking about if you see this, is interested in you. So one weekend, I had like 2 nights I was going to spend the night with him. Two nights out the weekend. And I had already been ministering and witnessing to him. And I figured I'd take that opportunity since I'm on that side of town. She lived about a block and a half from him, maybe 2. And I jumped on his bike and I rode to her house. Her mother and my dad worked at the same establishment. So I was in. Her mom had already, took a liking to me. And this particular evening when I stopped in, strictly to witness to her. Share my, when I say witness, I mean, let me tell you, let me give you a witness as to what my life has been like. Let me testify and speak on what my life has been like since I've given up the streets, hip-hop music, fornication, etc. I gave up sex, hip-hop, all of that. Porn, all of that. And that was my only objective, for being there. And she invited me in and we talked. We got into a lengthy conversation. And I'm talking about during the course of the conversation, she stands up, she go to the back of the room, she come back. But she was like, so you telling me that you really done gave up sex? It's like, yeah, I'm doing this for Jesus. I'm living for Jesus now. I mean, the Bible tells me that you never know when you're going to die. You just don't know. And I want to be in right standing, with the Lord thy God. And that's who I stand for. When I go to church, I don't stand up in church and ask, will the church agree in faith with me about big cars, extensions, on their houses or bigger houses or pay raises on jobs. I ask that the church agree in faith with me that the Lord will give me the courage, the strength to continue to go out to the streets and share his word. Because I was in the streets, nightclub action. I was catching them in the parking lot. I was in the projects and I was on the front porches of shot houses, 11 p.m. and after, up until about 2 a.m. Juvenile, pushing it. Insider. I'm not somebody on the outside spectating. I was moving because I believed in the word script. You have to become the script. St. John 14 and 1 made mention that in the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God. But if you skip on down to verse 14, it said, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among men. Christ within me had to continue to be a manifestation in front of people today, in spite of his absence. I can recall him telling to the disciples that I'm going to leave and I'm going to send you a comforter. He'll bring all things to your remembrance and teach you. And being out there in that field, pushing that gospel, that's what it was. It was strictly me bringing into fruition what people had read in the script. Sitting there talking with her and her being in doubt, like, nah, you ain't giving up sex. You ain't giving up sex. And then she tossed the condom in front of me. We were sitting on the sofa. She threw the condom like that. And in my mind, I remember Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, 10th chapter, when it spoke about though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. But it went on to speak on, and I'm paraphrasing, how we have to cast down vain imaginations and bring into captivity every high thought that exists, that exalt itself against the knowledge of Christ. Compiling all that together, I came to the conclusion that I can't just be a Christian outside of this place of dwelling, her house, but I have to be a Christian even behind closed doors. I could sit up and just think on what sex would be like with this girl. Because it was a teenage girl. I was a teenage boy. This girl had big legs back then. And I'm going to tell you about legs with an ass to go with it. It's a ridiculous combination, but truth be told, she had that. And within my mind, I said, nah, I can't engage in this. And I was able to cast down those vain imaginations and bring those thoughts to captivity so that I could walk out of this place as a whole individual who could rest within himself that, man, I did not succumb to such temptation. And I experienced a level of growth because to be in that kind of atmosphere, I mean, we had talked. And I mean, it was even talk over the phone that, the possibility of her, yeah, I go to church with you. So that's what lured me even there. Like, man, she's willing, because my associate, he was getting into the church again. They grew up in a different kind of like belief system. Outside of Islam, it was, within the faith. But the conversation with him and her was, yeah, we with it. And he had been to church. And then she had spoke about it, but I'm letting her know that I'm really, really about this life. And I just couldn't be in her midst and engage sexual activity with her and then leave only to utter amen. It just wasn't enough. So over a period of time, I'm praying for my dad. I'm praying for, associates of mine that I was in that street, in the streets with. But there were dudes that I know of who were dying, in their life. And the thing about it was, as I mentioned, Romans 10 said, for with the heart a man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Okay, I done that. James, the 5th chapter, verse 16 said that for the effectual prayers of a righteous man availeth much. So what makes me righteous? With the heart a man believe, and with the mouth a man confesseth unto righteousness. I became righteous based on the scriptures. And then following up with my actions, abstaining from sinful lifestyle. So I got Romans 10, I got to believe unto righteousness. Then I got James, the 5th chapter, verse 16, telling me the effectual and fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. But then when I turn over to Matthew 14 and 13, whatsoever man asketh in my name, that will I do. But I have to be righteous. People don't understand that the word righteous in essence means right standing. When Jesus said that whatsoever you ask in my name, that will I do, you have to be in right standing, which is to be righteous. The word name also means nature. So when Jesus said whatsoever you ask in my name, in essence he was saying whatever you ask in my nature. Well, what makes his nature? Based on biblical scriptures, Jesus was a righteous man. He walked an upright life. If I knock on wood right now, a piece of wood, a slab of wood, I would refer to it as wood. Why? Because of its nature. If I took a piece of metal and I stroked it and knocked on it and then referred to it as metal, I call it that by its name because of its nature. So nature mean name and name mean nature. Jesus saying, before you ask me for anything, you have to align yourself with my nature, which is to be upright. Well, I did that. And in the event, I got associates, childhood homeboys, street homies. They dying in their sin. So I'm like, damn, I'm praying in the name of Jesus. And the only way I can pray is if I be righteous. Because it said the effectual and fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Well, what makes me righteous? Well, with the heart a man believeth, and with the mouth confession is made unto righteousness. Did that. But why are the people that I care about dying in sin? Now, when I look over into the Old Testament, it said that because Noah was a righteous man, 8 people were saved. Noah, his wife, 3 sons, and their 3 wives, total of 8 people, because of his righteousness. So when I bounce over here to the New Testament, over in Acts 16th chapter, it says that when Paul and Silas, were in the prison, and the prison gates open, around 30, verse 30, 31, it mentioned that the jailer, one of the jailers that was assigned to overlook Paul and Silas, approached him and said, what do I need to do to be saved? Here you got Old Testament and New Testament scriptures. Old Testament, because of Noah's obedience, 8 people were saved. New Testament, a jailer said, you know what? Damn the fact that I looked over you. I was an overseer. I was a jailer. What do I need to do to be saved? Because of their lifestyle. And I'm telling you, I fasted, I prayed. Sometimes I would question, like, man, did I stay on my knees enough? Should I have turned down this street? Yeah, I hit 3 streets over here in the hood. Not my neighborhood, across town. I ain't even from there. I hit 3 streets. Should I have turned that 4th street? Should I hit that 4th block on the right? I used to always question why the failure? Why not the results? And what really hit me was the fact that the people that I loved and cared for, I was not seeing a result in their lives, man. My grandmother, you could pull up at a stoplight. She lived on the corner. And you can pull up, she lived on the corner of East Burdishaw and North Apple Tree. You can pull up on the corner of my grandmother's house at the stoplight. And you can hang a left and look clean through her house. Her house was sitting like this. I can recall vividly a cousin of mine telling me, well, I believe in, the Lord, and God is going to make a way. I remember when grandmama made it all the way home from church one day, and she got right in the driveway and gave out of gas. She was driving on fumes. And I asked my cousin, I said, so that's a blessing? Why? How can a God who utilizes the earth as his footstool allow his daughter, a committed vessel, to ride on fumes? That's a blessing to you? If my arrival time was that of the God of the heavens and the earth, and of Jacob and Isaac and Abraham, if my arrival time was as his, y'all would classify me a deadbeat father. Is an earthly individual who should be obligated and is obligated to raising, his children, the best in everything that I have within me. I only got 2. And contributing. If my arrival time was that of the God of the Bible, you would classify me as being a deadbeat. So I look back in my life and I like, damn, I made so many excuses as to why. Because I believed. I wouldn't even acted out on certain things had I not believed. I applied my faith with my works. But it's like, damn, man. I don't understand it. So I began to question some things. And because I didn't get answers, precise answers, I began to doubt. And before you know it, or knew it, I was a vagabond. I was wandering those streets as a juvenile. Angry, with it. And I sit down with religion. Long live atheism. And when I went off to prison, of course I would engage in religious activities, truth be told. But it was then that I started to venture out into different houses. And houses, I mean, the Nation of Islam wanted me to join them, but I'm like, nah, you can't convince me that all Caucasians are devils. Jehovah's Witnesses wanted me to fall in with them. I wouldn't. the Catholic Church, they had a pew open for me, I wouldn't. And I just arrived to that point in life where I was like, why aren't we seeing results? And when I started studying Hebrew and Greek, it started to open up some things for me in regards to why certain things they're just not so. King James being an individual who, a lot of times people look at King James and say, well, King James authorized version. Authorized come from the word authority. King James was an authority to pick the best Hebrew and Greek scholars in that day and time. What they did was he picked 54 of them. 7 of them fell off, so that left 47. Out of those 47, some of them was prejudice. When you look at the word prejudice, it means to prejudge something or someone before you get to know it or before you get to know them. So having that prejudice there were things perhaps like, but this person's letter shouldn't be in there, because keep in mind, the word Bible comes from the Latin word biblia, or the Greek word biblos. The 4 oldest languages on earth is Hebrew, Greek, Arabic, and Latin. When you think about the word homicide that we use every day, and especially in these inner cities, homicide, homo mean man, side mean killing. A man has been killed, or one man has been killed, or human has been killed. Genocide was coined by Raphael Lemkin, who was depicted as a Jewish refugee, and it was him that coined the term genocide, where gena mean race or tribe, side being a Latin suffix mean killing. But there were 4 elements that constitute genocide. You have what's called to impose measurements on a group of people to prevent childbirth was one. To withhold a body of information from a group of people, knowing that if they had that information, they could do better for themselves. 3, to just kill off people physically. That's what most people know. They commonly know that. And then 4 was to impose mental and physical harm on a group of people. Those are the 4 that constitute genocide, not just killing people off physically, but becoming a student of history, and not just a student of black history or American history. I come to the conclusion like, damn man, this shit is like 360, and you just can't invest all your time and energy into learning about black folks or American history. You have to like spread yourself out, and in doing so, there were some things that I learned that just didn't add up. So I began to question the whole Jesus, concept. And because I didn't get them answers, I became an atheist. And to this day, that's what I am. I'm an atheist. When I get involved with people on certain levels, they are entitled to know that I don't believe, because they have the right to.